ASSA at the University of Mpumalanga under auspices of this very large program. We are very pleased, seeing that this is a UMP ASSAf distinguished lecture, that we have two ASSAf members at the University of Mpumalanga. The one is Professor Lindiwe, the Dean of FANS, and of course Professor Victor Mlambo from Animal Science, School of Agriculture. I cannot resist to say that we have a very exciting, extraordinary leader in the audience who's been on campus for all of 3 days, and that is the new Dean of our Faculty of Economics, Development and Business Sciences, Professor Kedibone Pahu. Welcome, Professor Pahu. Colleagues, with those few opening remarks, really again, we highly acknowledge your participation today. Thank you indeed to Professor Sibanda, who's here, who will be formally introduced. And it's really my pleasure then to invite the Vice-Chancellor of University of Mpumalanga, Professor Lindiwe to provide her welcome and opening remarks. Professor Muyiwa.
Can we remove the flowers?
Okay.
Thank you. It's an instruction from Prof Lindiwe, so I'm just complying. I'll explain later why she's done that. Thanks a lot, Prof Strubo. Should I regard you as the program director, although looking at the program, I couldn't work out who's the program director. In isiZulu, my language, you say izandla ziyagezana, meaning one hand washes another. This Zulu proverb reminds us of the importance of collaboration and how essential it is. And speaking of hands washing each other, we did a lot of that when we consumed a lot of sanitizers. Remember that time during COVID in the last few years? We should absolutely be experts in hand washing now. But definitely we're not. Hence, we have you, Prof Lindiwe Sibanda, this evening, and also throughout the sessions that Prof Struble has made reference to. So that's the importance of such lectures. Distinguished guests, colleagues, students, partners, friends of UMP, those that are online, we greet you. Can I tell you that you actually have a friend that's sitting in the US right now? His name is Dr. Piwe Gumedo of MUT. He said, because he's following us, he said, he would have liked to do this, but he'll be at a conference. It's 12 p.m. for him right now. So you may probably want to Google him a bit. I don't know how he got to know you. I stand on the protocol that Prof Aldo Struble has presented and wants to acknowledge everyone in the house. Sanbonan, Mulwen, Tobayang, Abuane Dumelang. I'm surprising Prof Bashudu today. I'm using Abuane. Goeienaand, good evening. Jambo, as we say in Africa. It's my honor to welcome you to the 2025-26 ASSAf Distinguished Visiting Scholar lecture that's featuring our eminent guest, Professor Lindiwe Sibanda. I actually got to know about this, but I thank Prof Aldo for his notes tonight. Science, policy, food, African wisdom, climate is under one roof because of my darling. Something that really happens unless power goes off in this country. We've seen lots of that where we would be forced to be in one room where there's one candle or possible there's that light. But today we see it happening here and happening online. We're gathering a number of colleagues around the globe and online to do this. ASSAf since 1996 has become a beacon guiding South Africa towards an inclusive excellence, a driven scientific community. This kind of a program, this scholar program that's so distinguished, makes us the world-leading thinkers to our institutions, ensuring that our academic conversations remain bold, remain relevant, remain evidence-based as researchers. That's very important. and remain globally connected, as I made reference to earlier on. A friend of mine, should I say a friend, a mentee rather, he'll be surprised, since when I'm his friend. I actually taught him at university, but he's watching you right now. We're proud, as Prof Sibanda has said, to be joining Stellenbosch University, University of Venda, and the University of Pretoria on this journey as one of the hosting institutions. Professor Sibanda's resume shall be made reference to soon, but I actually looked at her work, which spans agriculture, climate, food systems, and diplomacy. Don't know how you match and bring all of this into one pot, madam, but her work reaches 300 million people in 120 countries. What does this make you, Lindiwe? It makes you much more better than WhatsApp broadcast list. So up we go, and here we are as UMP, our growth, our excellence. This is our pride that we're having, and we're hosting Lindiwe this evening. Actually, this season, if we count ourselves, part of Stellenbosch University, University of Venda, and University of Pretoria. You know that you are maturing as a university, as we are, when you start collecting chairs, because this is linked to that. And of course, we first start by collecting chairs, like Prof Paho, who will have collected a chair to sit and ensure that his bum is well supported, to ensure that his faculty gets to be well oiled, because the challenges that you're going to be facing that will make you much more stronger. But then we're collecting academic chairs. I'm not going to get into this, but just to let you know that we're collecting these chairs, research chairs, in a manner that is blowing my mind, given our youthfulness. We must thank our ASSA partner that's amongst us here to have ensured that this program does happen, and inadvertently contributing to our collection of the chairs that we're collecting. Now, why does this lecture matter? For me, I'm a foodie. My colleagues do know I'm always chewing, and I've been telling myself that, how am I going to get this six-pack that I'm actually aiming to get? It will soon be summer, and I need to be by the beach. But we want to remind ourselves that interdisciplinary solutions, which is your work, Sis Lindiwe, that demonstrate that it's very interdisciplinary, and in this world, we need to be collaborative and cooperative in our interdisciplinary ways of doing things to respond to the poly crisis that we have. And of course, should we be thanking Brother T? I tend to actually find him very interesting. I wish to dine him someday to understand how he thinks these things through. But fortunately, as Africans, we are expecting pitching in, especially in food systems. And your involvement in that is being demonstrated in the work that you do, and in our program of Ubudla that Prof Aldo has made reference to. Indeed, izandla ziyagezana, as my language says, one hand washes another, and tonight we shall be washing our hands figuratively as we shake your hand through your scholarship that you shall share with us, and we look forward to that as we strengthen our minds, as we strengthen Africa as the continent, South Africa. The province of Mpumalanga today was actually the Premier's State of the Nation address that unfortunately I missed because I had to attend to what pays my bills, my council meetings. But amongst the things that he made reference to was agriculture and the need for us to attend to climate change and ensure that we are sustainable in what we do and we have food security. And with that said, with you in our picture, with our Premier of the province in our picture, with his speech earlier this morning, indeed our future looks quite sustainable. Professor Sibanda, thank you for your leadership and insight. We look forward to your lecture. To all our guests, thank you for braving the rain, which I very much appreciate. It's been cool in Bombela these days. It's very nice to actually get to sleep clothed. I don't want to say most days how I sleep, but we have to work that out. It is very hot. But that said, to all our guests, thank you for enriching this collective journey of Ukugeza Izandla, where we wash each other's hands and strengthen each other, collaborate. With these few words, I welcome you to this lecture and welcome Professor Lindiwe Sibanda to say let's collaborate and wash Izandla, as my language says. Yabonga.
Professor Miwa, thank you indeed for the very kind words. Thank you for always having this very specific approach to having everyone feel included and share your vision, university's vision in a wider context with everyone. Thank you very much for your kind words. Colleagues, it's my pleasure to request Professor Livelihoods, a member of ASSAf, and the Dean of UMP's Faculty of Agriculture and Natural Sciences, to speak on behalf of ASSAf and provide context of the Distinguished Visiting Scholar Series. Professor Livelihoods.
Vice Chancellor, and also our distinguished guests, and of course members of MENCO that are here, colleagues, students and friends, good evening. Mine is quite simple, and I shall not try to match the VC's wisdom, so I will be dry in my speech. The Academy of Science of South Africa, known as ASSAf, has a mandate to mobilize the best scientific intellect and expertise to provide evidence-based solutions to national priorities and globally relevant matters. Furthermore, ASSAf is mandated to encourage scientific thinking in society and facilitate local and international partnerships for the benefit of the National System of Innovation, known as the NSI. The ASSAf Distinguished Visiting Scholar and thus DVS series of lectures advances the above mandate and ASSAf's internationalization objective. On an annual basis, ASSAf issues a call for nomination of prominent scholars from abroad, such as Prof Sibanda, to present special lectures at universities across the country. You would have heard that she has been at Stellenbosch University, is here now, and proceeds to Univen. And these special lectures that are presented at universities across the country are part of ASSAf's intentional actions towards fulfillment of its mandate. The core objectives of the DVS are promoting international connection of South Africa's NSI and facilitating scientific engagement. The University of Pretoria, through Prof Franz Swanepoel, who is here with us, nominated Prof Lindiwe Sibanda for the 2025-2026 ASSAf DVS program. The lecture by Prof Sibanda is well entrenched around ASSAf's strategic goals, namely the nexus of food, land, water, energy, and climate change. The only thing I would associate myself with, but of course learning from Prof Sibanda. But it also extends to service to society and the future of society. In 2023, ASSAf adopted the strategic framework of the polycrisis in recognition of the multifaceted and interlinked economic, social, and environmental challenges that modern society faces. This requires solutions that cannot be derived from a single scientific discipline or a single societal sector. And perhaps I could just quote that ukudla is part of such a multifaceted approach towards solutions that are geared in provision of solutions to societal challenges. The academy plays an instrumental role in forging connections between scientific disciplines and various sectors towards evidence-informed solutions. And therefore, this entrenches the use of data science as a tool towards achieving some of these goals. The topic of the UMP lecture is addressed interactively across the ASSAf Standing Committee on Humanities, the ASSAf Forum on Food Safety, and the Forum on Integrated Climate. Furthermore, we look forward to various local organizations taking the discussion forward, and with Prof Sibanda and other international experts within this discipline. And with those words, I thank you, Prof Sibanda, for blessing us with your presence, and we look forward to your wisdom. Thank you very much.
Professor Lindiwe, thank you indeed. Alex, it's really a great pleasure to request a budding star at University of Mpumalanga to provide the formal introduction of Professor Lindiwe Sibanda. She is in the form of Dr. Maswita Dalu from the School of Biology and Environmental Sciences, and the newest future professor fellow of UMP. In tonight's context also, Dr. Dalu is the first member from University of Mpumalanga who's been admitted to the South African Young Academy of Science, and that happened at the end of last year. So we thought it is very fitting for the Academy members to introduce our key speaker. Thank you, Dr. Dalu.
Distinguished members of the Academy of Science of South Africa, colleagues from the University of Mpumalanga, honored guests, government dignitaries, and fellow scientists. As a member of the South African Young Academy of Science, and as a young and mid-career, okay, early maybe, relative to the accomplishments in this room, working at the nexus of sustainable livelihoods, waste management, and climate adaptation, it is a profound honor to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening's ASSAf Distinguished Visiting Scholar Lecture, Professor Lindiwe Sibanda. In preparing this introduction, I did what any diligent academic would do. I turned to Google, hoping to find something personal, a favorite hobby, a secret talent, perhaps an unexpected anecdote. What I found instead was a remarkably well-curated inventory of lifelong achievement. Every search result read like a citation index of global influence. So, in the absence of anything trivial, I briefly turned to my imagination and attempted to construct a day in the life of Professor Sibanda. I imagined her beginning the morning reviewing global agricultural resilience strategies, followed by advising an international board on climate finance alignment, then mentoring emerging African scholars over lunch, and closing the evening refining language for a multilateral declaration before sunrise in another time zone. And then I realized this was not imagination, it was simply her CV. Let me return us to the order of business. Professor Sibanda stands as a preeminent global leader at the intersection of agriculture, climate, and sustainable food systems policy. Until mid-2025, she chaired the CGIAR Integrated Partnership Board, steering the world's largest publicly funded agricultural research network. She serves as co-chair of the Food Planet Prize, sits on the board of Nestle and the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator, holds an extraordinary professorship at the University of Pretoria, and chairs the Council of Zimbabwe's National University of Science and Technology. Her scholarly influence remains active and formidable, with publications in Nature and Nature Plants, and her decades of advocacy were instrumental in shaping the historic UAE Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture adopted at COP28. Many will remember her leadership of the 2009 No Agriculture, No Deal campaign, which ensured agriculture's formal recognition within global climate negotiations. Across her career, her work has reached more than 300 million people in 120 countries, always centering farmers, science, and policy in one coherent conversation. In her own words, Africa's future is by making sustainable food systems a priority. Today, she will speak on food at the center, health, climate, and the future of Africa, a theme that speaks directly to those of us in this room who are committed not only to producing knowledge, but to ensuring that knowledge transforms societies. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Lindiwe Sibanda.
I'm afraid it's... Thank you very much for the introduction. As you were speaking, I was showing the Vice Chancellor what I spend the day doing. I'm retired. So everything you said is incorrect. Retirees spend the day sunbathing. That's what I do. But thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, for the warm introduction and welcome. I just wanted to confirm that I can actually say izandla ziyagezana lapha eMpumalanga and sizoyinqoba impi yendlala. The first part is yours. The second part was from someone who was online yesterday when I spoke at Steers, and he said in his write-up on LinkedIn, he said, I hope you understand Zulu because I want you to know sizayinqoba limpi yendlala. And I was like, that's my language. So yes, for those who don't understand, it means we will overcome, we will win, we will win, we will overcome, we will end hunger. And it's been said, so it has to happen. Please, may I have the slides? Because I'm here where the sun rises, and because I'm here where Ugudla is participating at large, the title is Ugudla at the Center, Health, Climate, and the Future of Africa. You're already part of the Ugudla initiative, and people struggle to pronounce the word. But when we say food, we mean Ugudla. So I was shy to put Ugudla because Kristen is here, but now that I've pronounced it, that is the title of today's lecture. Ugudla at the center. What does it mean for health? What does it mean for climate? And the future of Africa. Allow me to just share highlights of the areas I'll touch on. I always feel there are some people get into agriculture by accident. So it's important that we go through the different revolutions that have gotten us to where we are in this fight against hunger. I'll also touch on why food, Ugudla, matters now. The tools that I believe a university such as Mpumalanga should be embracing in our war against hunger. I'll unpack what wicked problems we are facing and the role that universities can play. and play a bit with a toy that I'm currently seized with, which is the ASSA Sustainable Food Systems Academy, then a call to action. So there we go. There's been 4 agriculture revolutions before us. We are currently in the 4th one. Quick rundown. No one wants to go back to that hunter-gatherer stage. They used the hand hoe, and woe unto us scientists, because we still have communities where the hand hoe is not a tool of choice, but it's the only tool that they still know in agriculture. I used it in the 60s, 70s in my grandmother's farm, and we have not done much to move to the next revolution as Africa, which was the Industrial Revolution, where mechanization was the big drive. Can you imagine how much easier it would be to attract all the youth into agriculture if we could have little toys, little tractors, something that would make the drudgery of agriculture out zero, and we bring in mechanization. We've not done well on that. The 3rd revolution was the big green revolution in the 60s. This is the revolution that was driven by the consultative group of international agriculture research organizations as far back as 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, where a guy by the name of Norman Borlaug heard about the hunger in Asia, which was going to decimate the whole continent, and he invested in taking hybrid seed for maize, for wheat, and later rice to Asia. But the good thing that happened there is that the governments in India, China came in with mechanization, they came in with irrigation, they came in with infrastructure and policy support, and yields just went up, and they were able to generate enough food locally to avert disaster. That is what the Green Revolution was about. Sadly, it was about quantity. They forgot about the environment. It was more wheat per hectare, more maize per hectare, more rice per hectare, and all those 3 are cereals. Very little was done on nourishing the body, which is the protein, the vegetables. Very little was done on nourishing the soil. And they ended up with disaster, where they extracted more using the more yield, but did not feed the soil and the environment, and failed to nourish people. 2015, we moved to the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations declared that when we moved to SDGs. But the beauty with the subject of food is that it touches on all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We call that the food wedding cake. We talked about food. It touches on the economy, which was the quantity fight of more yield. It touches on society. Food touches on all SDGs that deal with society, but also on the biosphere. So inspired by that, maybe let me just highlight something else in the 4th agricultural revolution. The beauty with this revolution that we're in is that it's digitally driven. That's why I'm excited about the Ukudla initiative that this university is involved in. We are talking agriculture, sustainable food systems, and a digitally driven, technology-driven agriculture. Africa missed out on the third revolution, which is the Green Revolution, because we still have farmers producing 1/10 of the potential of the seeds that they're using. But with this 4th revolution, all hands are on deck to make sure we catch up, we leapfrog. And that's why digital has to be underlined, because this is what will help us to leapfrog and not walk step by step in revolutionizing our agriculture. For me, the best part that has happened to agriculture is what Secretary General of the United Nations did in year 2021 to move from agriculture, link agriculture to the Sustainable Development Goals, but also link it to the agenda of sustainable food systems. Sustainability, I've unpacked, it's economic, it's social, it's environmental. But food systems means we are no longer in the business of farming. I remember when I got the scholarship to go to Egypt, where I got my first degree from the University of Alexandria. My father was like, so you are going to study what your grandmother has been doing all her life? And I said, no, agriculture is a science. So he said, what does science do? I failed to explain that because the answer was farming. But with sustainable food systems, we now move from farm to the table. We now move from inputs that go into the farm, the actual farming, the harvesting, the post-harvest management, the reduction of food loss and waste, the processing, the distribution of food, and the consumption to nourish the body. We also now touch on the environment, which is where the sustainability component was lost in the Green Revolution. So if you walk from the hand hoe in the first revolution to mechanization, to a green revolution, which was quantity, 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 to the fourth revolution, which is sustainable food systems from farm to the table, we have won the war. We are no longer producing farmers who stay at the farm gate to say we've produced more maize. We are now producing food systems scientists who will understand the business of nourishing people with good quality seed, which we breed, with good soils that are healthy and have all the nutrients that the seeds can absorb, with a clean environment where we reduce emissions from agriculture through better soil management so as to retain nutrients in the food that we produce. So what better way can you develop a country than addressing sustainable food systems? We are talking about nourishing food for all, sustainable consumption. Vice Chancellor, it's got to be sustainable consumption. It's less for more dense nutrients. We're talking about nature positive production, where we worry about emissions that are in the environment and use technologies to minimize tillage of our soil, to cover our soils, but more important, to rotate our crops. We are also talking about resilience to shocks, where after a drought, people can bounce back better because of science and technologies that we generate. And we're talking about equitable livelihoods, people who can generate a sustainable livelihood from agriculture and food systems. So there can be no better profession that I can think of that will give us a win in the way we live, in the way we nourish our body, and in the way we nourish the environment. So I just want to say my belief that if Africa gets food right, we will stabilize health, we will strengthen climate resilience, we will create jobs, we will restore dignity, because we won't be relying on other people to feed us. We will produce food that nourishes our body and our environment. Food is not just a sector, it's the foundation for development. I move on. Why at a time like now? It's said to say Africa is the museum for stunting. We have countries in Africa, not to be mentioned, where 30% of the children at about 5 years are stunted. When I grew up, they always thought if you are short, you're stunted. No. Stunting is about the brain development. If you do not feed that body adequately in the first 5 years, the brain development is affected and that child will never, ever recover. Can you imagine 30 years from now where countries are led by 30% of a population or household of people who have maldeveloped brains? What a world it would be. Of all the markers, the stunting is one we have failed to move the needle because we are not being careful on the food we feed our pregnant mothers and the food we feed our children after weaning. It's okay when they're on the breast, but the moment they move from 2 years, if they breastfeed that long, to 5 years, we have done away with our indigenous food. We have gone to the supermarket to buy food that are not affordable. We then compromise. You find children that are raised on chips, French fries, and that's the meal for the day. Children that are fed on just mealie-meal porridge with no protein addition to it 3 times a day. That leads to stunting. And yet, our grandmothers were able to produce well-nourished bodies. But the danger is not so much about the quantity, number of meals. It's knowing how to nourish those bodies, particularly in the first 5 years. Food and health, I've touched on that, stunting and obesity. Obesity is a lifestyle issue, but more important, let's get the diverse foods so that we nourish the body and not make our pharmacists rich in supplementary vitamins. We can have a diverse plate because no one food will provide all the nourishment you need. You will have to have all 7 colors on your plate, and best when you produce it locally. Sustainable food systems is the answer to improving our environment. I've touched on how we can mitigate and adapt to climate change through agriculture. A recent paper by a friend of mine, Johan Rockström, tells us that you can generate up to 0.8 tons of gigatons of carbon if you practice conservation agriculture. This generated per year can save up to 70% of the fossil fuel that we use. It's published, it's on LinkedIn, it was on this week. Can you just imagine if we do agriculture right, how many other problems we can address, as I showed in the Sustainable Development Goals. So we've got to do it right. We've got to be good stewards for our soils. We've got to address the energy challenge, and we've got to address the water challenge. And all this can be done through science. These are the 4 interventions: conservation agriculture, which is a practice that was developed in the 60s. But like anything coming from science, we fail to take things to scale. Taking to scale is having more farmers adopting a technology, but also having the right policy environment. But we have left it to the academics to talk to the policymakers who are politicians, and in most cases there's a mismatch. We don't speak the same language, and as academics we then walk away and say they will catch up. We will continue publishing papers. We have to knock on those doors until they get it. And we also need to change the way we communicate. Not all academics can communicate or speak the language of a simple citizen. We feel as we get more educated, we have to have more jargon. But the more jargon we have, the less impact we have, because the majority who are the more powerful will not understand you. So let's calm down. to the level of the people so that they get it and they understand that unless we have a conducive policy environment, we will not end hunger. We're talking a lot about crops, but let's not forget about improving livestock systems. For Africa, it's a must-do. It is no coincidence that the International Livestock Research Institute is headquartered in Africa, in Nairobi and Ethiopia. It serves the whole world, but it generates public good technologies for improving livestock systems. Soil, I've already touched on. We used to have farmers who feed the soil, feed the family, feed their pockets. But when we came with the Green Revolution, we said, clear your crops where our grandmothers would have their groundnuts, they would have their sweet potato, they will have their sorghum, they will have a multiplicity of crops, plus some goats, plus free-ranging chickens, plus a dairy cow. But we said to get more money, you have to do one crop and use fertilizer a lot. But when prices went down, what that meant was they earned less money and could not nourish the family anymore because they were growing one crop, which was supposed to provide income to go and buy the other goods the family needs. How beautiful would it be if we were intentional on making sure that that multiplicity is brought back to our smallholder farmers so that their first priority is to raise healthy children. Then those who want to go commercial, there's nothing wrong with large-scale commercial farming, but you've got to have the tools. But the first priority in a smallholder setting is to feed the family, and the family cannot be fed with one crop. You need the diversity. You need the sugar cane, you need the groundnuts, you need the melons, you need the sweet potato for breakfast. But we've done away with that and gone to the supermarket for bread. We even prefer the white bread over the brown. That's how sophisticated we've become. So just to sum that up, it's soil, farming, markets, diets, healthy people, and a healthy planet. That's what sustainable food systems is about. Let's aim for diet quality and not just food quantity. Let's aim for resilience. We can only bounce back better if we feed our soil and the environment. We need to be climate smart and not talk about generating emissions that damage our climate. I want to touch on indigenous crops. I've already given highlights, but one thing that I would like to appeal to our group in agriculture is go back whilst there's still institutional memory and the genetics are still there, to collecting the genes for our traditional indigenous crops. From the research we've done, we've found those crops are nutrient dense and they are climate smart. But we don't have them in sufficient quantities. That's why the younger generation does not enjoy them. So I've been lucky to have been the inaugural co-chair of the Vision for Adapted Crops and Soils for Africa under Kerry Fowler, who got the World Food Prize 2 years ago. And now this outfit is coordinated out of South Africa by Julia Sevilla under CIMIT. I strongly recommend that you find ways of linking up, because we are talking bambara nuts, we are talking okra, we are talking amaranth, morojo, all the nice things that we don't get in full quantities. It was a joy this afternoon when I had lunch at your own hotel to find that they were serving good traditional food, and I was like, we need more of this, and thank you for that wonderful lunch. But we are not educating people enough on how to grow, breed, and put food science. If I speak to the chef, these foods take hours to produce. Can't we push some science to modernize the way you cook these traditional foods, grow them in better quantities, so that our children can make them the go-to foods rather than French fries? So VAX is the initiative that I want to leave with you. Look it up. You will find ways to connecting. Already it's an ongoing program looking for partnerships. CIMIT, that's the Center for Maize and Wheat under Mexico, is your contact organization that's leading up. Some universities are already there, so please get in there. I've touched on animal source foods. For that one, the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, is your go-to institution for new technologies that you want to bring to the continent. And I'm happy to say you've got local champions in the name of Prof Strobel who understand what ILRI is about. One thing that fascinates me about animal source foods is that in as much as the world is going go green, 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 they are eating close to 1 kilogram per capita, yet our countries were at 20 grams per capita, some of our countries. There is no better source of protein than animal source protein. But don't overdo it, but you need the minimum for a functional body, particularly for those stunted children or about to be stunted. So have your chickens, have your livestock. That's what we need. We need the milk as well. Now, youth employment. Agriculture food systems is the key. By 2050, what the world is saying, we will be the youngest continent. And I didn't understand the gravity of this until I spent time in Europe, where you find that the youth population has thinned to the extent that finding workers for skilled labors, for the skills that are required, is becoming difficult because there is a gap in terms of generational gap. So people will migrate to Africa for those skills. If we are not trained and equipped with those skills, we will miss the train again. So there is an opportunity. Get skilled in the life skills that the world needs. Agro-processing and engaging in the whole value chain will create jobs. Let's not export raw materials. Let's process here and let's generate the science for processing. But also it just gives us dignity when we get our food right. It gives us dignity when we are healthy. It gives us dignity when we are economically empowered by having healthy bodies that can go to work and eat well. Another tool I want to introduce is one I generated when I was working with a team with Fanapan, where we worked on, you cannot improve households where you don't understand their capital. There are 5 key capital assets that you need to understand. There's the human capital. How many people are able-bodied in that house? Let me go through. There's the natural assets. What assets do they have? There's the physical assets, there's the financial assets, and there's the social assets. In a place like Mpumalanga, where people have been employed, possibly in the coal industry, when they are retrenched, when those work environments close down, what happens to the assets of the household? And what are the alternatives that you as university are proposing? You will not know how to work this out unless you understand the vulnerability of each household. So there is a tool. We generated it at Fanapan when we had the high impact of HIV and AIDS, but you can replace that with any challenge. The challenge can be drought. Once you've had a drought in a highly vulnerable household, how do they bounce back better? You have to go back to the assets that they have. You have to map the assets to the opportunity and the technologies that you are generating. Only then can you have societal impact. So let's look around our communities and see how do we categorize them and how do we lift them out of poverty. I want to touch on another tool or another challenge that we face, the challenge of addressing wicked problems. Climate change, malnutrition are wicked problems that I say are very difficult to move because they don't belong to any one minister If you go to the Minister of Agriculture, they will talk very little about nutrition. If you go to the Minister of Health, they will talk very little about nutrition. So this is an orphan. Thanks to sustainable food systems, we now understand how we can make our foods nutrient dense. But it takes more than just producing the food. It needs water and sanitation. It needs education. You need to know how to nourish a body. You need to know what 7 colors in a diverse plate means. You need a Ministry of Social Protection, but you also need women to understand. And here, please understand me. It's on record, 80% of the food that we eat in Africa goes through the hands of a woman. So, if those women don't understand how to nourish their children, we'll all be fed on fish and chips. And yeah, the consequences I've touched on. But if we push education, so you are cutting across the Ministry of Education, Social Protection, Agriculture, Water and Sanitation. So you have a wicked problem. How do you address it? Climate change is one, where if you introduce it into your university curriculum, the educated people say it's got nothing to do with me. Talk to the people who are doing environment. How do we deal with these often complex, wicked problems? My proposed intervention is that everybody has to be a seed of change. We all have to understand this and pass it to every generation. How do we do it? By engaging in policy development. I touched on the role of policy, and I did not unpack it. But what I mean is policy is not for agriculture economists, it's for all of us. It starts from policy formulation where you identify a problem. The problem we have is malnutrition. You want to educate your decision makers. You want to set the agenda of how do we address this problem. That's the role of researchers. You want to develop the evidence. And once you have the evidence, you want to equip those who are most affected by the problem, who could be farmers, who could be ordinary citizens, to engage with our parliamentarians, who then can take the issue to parliament. Most cases, parliamentary dialogues are about politics, but politics of food is the most important politics. And because food affects all of us, we should be able to have the evidence generated by universities, by researchers to say, to address hunger, to address malnutrition, this is what we want in our province. It's messy, because there are no winners and losers. It's the politician who will decide whether to reduce the price of food or to leave it as it is. But keep knocking on their doors. And you can only knock if you understand the game. But don't get into politics. Stay on the policy side, because politics is for the brave. So when you get into policy development, you research, generate evidence, and equip many actors to talk to policymakers. Big difference between advocacy and lobbying. When you research, you equip those affected by the problem to advocate. When you lobby, you chase a specific minister for action. That gets you into trouble. We developed a tool again at Fanapan for Theatre for Policy Advocacy, where we got communities to develop songs based on academic research that generated messages. And I'm happy to say we're able to change a number of policies in Mozambique, in Lesotho, and Swaziland, thanks to empowering those most affected by the problem to have quantifiable evidence that they use for advocacy purposes. Lobbyists in most cases are emotional, they talk from their hearts, but advocates use evidence, and then it's the role of universities. I've highlighted the key things that I believe you should be seized with as a university in this area, but based on my experience and the work that I've done with CGIR, I've shared a couple of institutions you can chase up. I want to highlight my engagement with the Food Planet Prize, would like more African universities to pitch for innovations they have developed. It's a $1 million prize every year that we give to an innovation that will improve nourishing people and nourishing the planet. We've been going now 6 years. June this year, we announced another prize, but we are looking at Africa, particularly developing countries, to pitch innovations that are relevant locally and can improve nutrition of people and the planet. So look it up. Another one that I would like to touch on is GESDA, which is the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Governance Platform. The multilateral system as we know it in the UN is under attack. We need more platforms where scientists, policymakers, diplomats can meet and think about what will the future food be like in 25 years? What research should we be doing now to inform the needs 25 years ago? It's not just scenario planning for the future. It's diplomacy, it's government engagement, it's researchers, but it's also about breaking the silos, transdisciplinarity, to address societal challenges. There is a call going on now. If you are interested, it's online on LinkedIn under GESDA. They are funding fellows who are interested to come and observe and be part of this journey. And I'll encourage your postdoctoral fellows and your doctoral students to apply. We meet every year in October in Geneva for that one. Finally, you as universities, you are sitting on gold. The challenges, climate science, nutrition, agriculture innovations, entrepreneurship. We are no longer training you to be farmers as I was trained. We are training you to be employers. When you develop your technologies, your innovations, you will establish your own businesses. So you've got to be entrepreneurial. So this is the place for your education. Universities are the most powerful asset we have for convening dialogues, for being the anchor of trust for the whole community, for driving the societal change that we want to see in our journey for ending hunger. There is no better place I can think of for that transition that we are driving, because we have the trusted space, trusted by politicians, trusted by communities who send their children here, and trusted by the global community, because in as much as science is under attack, there's still a voice of reason when we do it right. So my appeal is that this should not be the first or the last of these dialogues. There's so many people with a story to tell. It should be routine for universities to be having such talks every month, just to educate the community on the transdisciplinary opportunities for addressing societal challenges. I am currently dealing with a toy where I am seized with the question of, if you are not trained as a farmer as I was trained, by farmer I mean in agriculture, but you are passionate in joining the army that will end hunger, where do you go? I want to believe we should be driving short courses that allow a change of profession. Thanks to Germany, and I hope our Ogudla team can immerse themselves into developing these short courses. The best part of my stay in Berlin at the Robert Bosch Academy was meeting a minister whose sole profession on his CV was, I'm a butcher. Trained, proud butcher who is now a minister. And I said, in my country, you'll be the laughing stock. Yeah, they would say, so why didn't you go to school? He went to school to be a butcher. If we unpack the value chains, I've chosen one, beef production. Can you imagine how many jobs we will create for our young people? Just from farm to the table. And yet we sit back and say, I'm an animal scientist. and I'll get a government job or I'll work in private sector. You can create the jobs, and those short courses will give you dignity, and you will charge for it because you'll be a specialist and many will be looking for it. So I would like to see how best we can be more intentional in making the war against hunger everybody's war. They will only do it if we equip them with the discipline that we have kept as the prison of the few. The question before us is not whether food will shape Africa's future, that we know it will. It will influence health, it will influence our economy, our environment, and our political stability. So, how do we place this at the center of everything that we do? I'm choosing to do it by short courses for anybody who wants to get into the profession. And the challenge is, how will you do it to make sure food is everybody's business and that we end this war against hunger? I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Is there any other better place to offer this lecture than here? This is the perfect place for that lecture. And if you are here a UMP student, a staff member, you were doubting your choice, I'm sure today you were affirmed that you are in the right university, in the right province, and also in the right career path. My name is Naledi Tite, the Director of Research, and I'll be facilitating the discussions, the questions. So if you have questions for Prof or you want to discuss further a certain point that she has mentioned, this is the moment. So there's a mic that will be roaming for you to engage and discuss with us. Prof has touched on very key and important points. He has touched on the importance of agriculture, the value chain of it, and also the food sustainability, the importance of us having good soil and seed, and how it gets to influence the community and the economy, and how it gets to create jobs for the youth. So I want us to have discussions with Prof. If you are in the sector, we are all affected by the food that we eat, by agriculture, by the food systems. So let us engage with Prof. Can I see by show of hands? Okay, I have noted 3 hands.
There are many hands.
I've noted 3 hands where the mic is at. Prof, you are also noted. Who has the microphone? Please go ahead.
Okay, good day to everyone. My name is Lindiwe. I am a agricultural student doing animal science. So I had a question. I wanted to impart my knowledge in poultry production to people as a side hustle. So I'm having difficulty in finding a facilitator course because you need to have a facilitator certificate to be able to impart the knowledge that I've already acquired from university. So I wanted to ask Prof if she knew of a place or an institution where I could get that facilitator certificate to be able to impart the boiler production knowledge that I've already acquired.
That is noted. I'm going to take 3 questions, Prof, before we can respond. Is that
Yeah.
okay? Okay. The second question?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mpochirwane. I'm a PhD student, doing, yes, PhD in agriculture student. I'd first like to thank you for a very informative lecture. It was very beautiful. So my question is, how can Africa address competition for food resources between human consumption and livestock production while ensuring food security and sustainability?
So it's competition against?
How can Africa address competition for food resources between human consumption and livestock production while ensuring food security and sustainability?
Noted. How do we address food competition between human consumption and animal consumption while we ensure sustainability? Noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last question in this first round. So, okay,
I just, Prof, I just wanted to find out, how do we overcome the whole issue of agriculture not being a sexy subject, to use the common language?
how do you make agriculture sexy and attractive, especially to the young ones, the upcoming generation?
Thank you, Prof, for the presentation. We really appreciate this special lecture. It was like the DVC decided to favor us in agriculture. I'm actually Funchora Tekutu. I'm the head of the School of Agricultural Science.
Okay.
So it's quite exciting, Prof. As a university, I think the decision or the selection of indigenous crops, which you have mentioned, also played one key role in terms of the selection of crops. And the goal really is to make UMP an institution where visitors that comes to this province can access indigenous food. We are working towards that as a school, and I'm excited to indicate, Prof, that Prof Julia Sibia is a very close, I mean, we know we work with her and her own products. It's one of our recently graduated NGAP lecturer, so she's now a full lecturer in the school, and her work also, although worked on maize, but now together we're working on indigenous crops, and it's something that we look forward to through you reaching her back to see how we access that contact for that big project that she's currently driving. My question, I also appreciate your talk on the value of soil health for sustainable food systems, which also links to my own inaugural lecture at DVC. So we are grateful for that. So the question that I want to bring is the aspect of climate science. It's something that is very, very critical, and linking that linking that to production and making agriculture sexy, like my DVC did mention. So my question then is, how do we successfully integrate the various phases that are linked from production to consumption? Looking at the various elements, you emphasize livestock, which is a very, very critical aspect. How do we bring that together and use that to enrich our offering, particularly here in the province and UNP, where we still growing and putting resources together. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for that question on the integration of very key and important role players in the food sustainability systems. Prof, over to you.
Over to me. Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible. After that hitch, we don't know what's going on. So first to Simpiwe. I think you are talking to your head of school and to your vice chancellor. I'll tell you my own experience. I graduated with a PhD in animal physiology and nutrition. When did I get my farm? I think I got a farm. I'm farming in Zimbabwe, so one of the pictures I didn't show is the best time I have is I'm resident at the farm now as a retiree. I got a farm. It was exciting because it was a competitive process. These farms were rent to buy in Zimbabwe, and then after you paid the rent over 15 years, we bought the farm. But the exciting bit was you wake up, you've signed the paper, you drive to the farm and you're like, where do I start? Armed with a PhD, no one taught me how to farm. Is that what you've gone through? So, guess who I went to? I went to my father, who is now 94 years old. He's the one who told me step by step what to do. He said, start by visiting your neighbors. Then test your soil. Then ask your neighbors what mistakes they made when they started farming. I had already defended an academic piece of the farm business plan. That's what won me the farm, because I got a friend to write it up, right? But when you are now faced with the reality of doing it, our education system doesn't equip us well with the real life business of producing broilers. You'll be surprised your uncle in the village can do it better than you. But you have to do it 10 times better because you are now educated, you have to be efficient, and you have to do the mathematics to make a profit. So those are the short courses that we need as part of producing these graduates, where if they talk food systems, I found most of the graduates got in because they wanted to go to vet school, where I come from, but because they don't qualify, they end up going to agriculture or any other science. When they graduate, they have no jobs, they go teaching, and 50% have no passion to go into farming or agriculture. Two things we've done wrong. We have trained them without intentionality. We've produced a graduate, first who got into the field without passion. Agriculture is 50% passion. For someone like me to be on the farm is because my heart misses a beat when I don't go to the farm for a prolonged time, yeah? So you've got to be passionate about it. And for those who've rubbed shoulders with farmers, you know when they're at the farm, they're happiest. But the good thing is it's no longer about farming, it's the whole value chain from farm to table. So those short courses, once you've graduated, you've chosen broiler, there must be a school somewhere here where you can go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks and produce your own broilers under supervision, be equipped with bookkeeping of how to start, be equipped with the health requirements, be equipped on how to build that fowl run. But we don't have that. And that's what I'm trying to push, because people are doing it inefficiently by learning from neighbors. But how much more would it be if done by someone who's passionate and has intentionally gone for that short course? So the short courses I'm talking about are different from what, is it TVET? That the South African, it's really about, I am trained as an accountant, but I now want to produce broilers. Where can I go? Night school or just 2 weeks attachment, see it, live it, and go and do it. Because we now need to produce entrepreneurs. We cannot be producing everybody to be employed. 80% of what we produce as graduates will have to create jobs because we are now doing it en masse. and the employment industry cannot take all of you. So Prof, to answer your question on agriculture is not attractive, let's talk food systems, not agriculture. So the people we are targeting don't understand we've evolved to sustainable food systems. They still think if you apply in that faculty, they will teach you to be a farmer. But we have got graduates who can't farm. So let's tell them it's the faculty. So there's a lot in a name. Yeah? I won't say anymore. The name should talk to the people that we want to attract. And by not having the word food in what we've done all these years, we've lost our constituents. They've known it as the faculty of farming, and yet you produce people who can't farm. So why go there? Yep, I hope I've answered you. And then in Africa, your question is, when we produce food, should we feed people or should we feed animals? I think it's a different type of food. The whole beauty of having livestock, your ruminants, your cattle, your sheep, your goats, is that by nature and design, they should ruminate. They have a different stomach from us. So they should eat that which we do not eat and convert it better into feed, which is the meat, the milk, and all the other products that we need. So nothing wrong with livestock production. But because most of our production systems were inherited from places where they had excess corn and have changed from maize to corn to designate a particular country, they then had the luxury of doing food aid programs, of doing feeding en masse of their livestock. But let's start from basics. What's our priority? To nourish people. If we produce excess, there's nothing wrong. But let's start by prioritizing. For us to produce food in excess, it means the price should go down and more people should afford it. But that's what they've done in their countries. But for us, we take the little we have, feed our animals, and those who still don't have go without as hungry people. So that's a policy game. That's where you have to do your research as a PhD student, quantify what goes where, and do a position paper, and equip people who can then advocate for intentionality in producing nourishing food and feed, F-E-E-D, compared to F-O-O-D, food for people and feed for our animals. Yeah? Good. And then head of school, a thought came to me. The Vice Chancellor was showing off. He says, we've really matured. We have got chairs. Can I ask for a chair in indigenous crops? That would be sexy. I'll tell you why. No one in Africa has done that. No one in the world. Because we look down on our history and don't lift things that will make us unique. It's the first time I'm saying this. When I did my PhD was on goats, by the way. I could not register at the University of Zimbabwe because they said there was no one to supervise me and there was no literature on goats because goats were backward, they were for the village, and there's no reference literature. Where will you? I ended up registering with the University of Reading because they had milk goats. I think it's the same thing with our indigenous crops. You are proud Julia is here, Sibia, but we have not amplified the voice to say we are proud of these indigenous crops. And yet Cargill is the other company that has been following, and I won't mention others, big companies are now looking at these crops for producing beer, for producing all sorts of byproducts because of their resilience. And yet we will be the underdogs when this has been taken away. So I see a good chair there. Now, the issue of climate science, you're finding it difficult. This is the science that is the draw card for development now. There's an interesting program with the University of Pretoria that I've been involved in with the measurement of greenhouse gases, because in Africa we've been fighting that we don't emit as much emissions as those factory-produced livestock, but yet we didn't have the figures. isn't that an interesting science to be involved in? So how can we fail to teach that? Another thing is food loss and waste. It's unpacking the understanding. I learned 10 years ago when I joined the Champions Group that if food loss and waste was a country, it would be the third biggest emitter of greenhouse gases. That's why the lady who introduced me is doing, yeah, that's climate science. Because all the emissions from our waste production are emitting greenhouse gases. So I think let's unpack it to our audience so that they see the science. But when we generalize, no one gets interested and everybody says it's not mine. It's to do with livestock that emits greenhouse gases and it's to do with fertilizers. No, it's the science of today. And another big thing is the digital component of that. So unpack climate science, divide it into adaptation and mitigation, and there's a lot and it affects everybody. So I think there is an opportunity there. Yeah, so I think I've covered all 4 questions.
Prof has covered our questions, and Prof, much appreciation for the insightful lecture, for the knowledge that you have exchanged with us, and also much appreciation to the students and everybody who's here, our academics, management, university leadership for the discussions. For us, it ends here. I'm going to hand over to the program director.
There's somebody there who's dying.
Oh, there's a burning question. Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bunana Manga, and shockingly, I'm an LLB student. Because it's much more based on agriculture, but what I've discovered is that food does not affect just the people doing agriculture, also
Well done.
So I want to know which role we have to play as LLB students. And as you were presenting, I happened to look at some of the acts, and I discovered that we actually do have legislation that governs the production of meat and also thereby agriculture. However, in our curriculum, it's not included. So I don't know if it's relevant to raise that. We do need this to be included also in our curriculum so that we come out equipped so that we can advocate. When you come from your department and you consult with my law firm, I can be able to say that, oh, it rings a bell, and we can actually file a lawsuit against a production that is producing food in means which are not proper for consumption in a way. Thank you so much.
I'm glad we got you in. Well done. So there's another, we'll take 3 more and it's only fair. Whilst the mic is going, I'll start. So yesterday, I came across a Professor Oliver Ruppel, professor at Stellenbosch University. What he has just done is a law on soil protection. Yeah? He's a lawyer. And he has taken this to the African Union. He tells me it's been endorsed. He's now looking for pilot countries to collect the data on who is violating what on our soils. So that gives you a live example that it can be done. So I can give you the context. But yeah, it's live. Couple of companies I'm involved with are being sued. I think there is a recent legislation that says you can sue for climate damage. Yeah? To say we are poor because of all this pollution. So give us money, pay back, yeah? So all this, or we've been eating bad quality food, that's why we can't think anymore. So prove it, the class action, yeah? Good.
The lady at the
I
back.
like it because it's the students asking now, so yeah, they're saying yeah. 2 more.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sifihle Mfo. And okay, I'm also an LLB student, but I'm a second year student. So my question, okay, it's not 1 question, it's like 2. Because the first one, it's on beef farming. So since already like the cost of food is already high, and South Africa is already making exports to other countries. They're selling beef, and already our prices for beef are high for us, and we cannot afford our own beef. So does that mean we should not eat beef so that our country could sell beef outside? Or is there a way that you guys, like in agriculture, maybe you're finding new ways to grow our cattle so that we also ensure sustainability, that we don't just export our own while our people suffer?
Good one.
And the second one is that considering our political structure and how it's happening in our country, do you think our government is doing enough to secure that, to ensure that there are people who work in the agricultural industry to ensure food security? Because we don't have that much scientists who are gonna work with agriculture, because most people just focus on health and not the food that we consume. And the food is the one that makes us sick, considering disturbances, diarrhea, all those other things. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Quick answer there. The rising cost of beef. I met over lunch one of your lecturers who is an economist. They can explain that better than me. Where is he? Anyway, he was there and he's doing PhD. He just graduated, I think, with a PhD in yes. That's really about policies, because what we find is that when prices go up, it's either the imports are affecting the cost of production, suppressing or promoting. I'll unpack that better. Prices go up because cost of production is high, right? So government needs to intervene by either helping the farmers get vaccines better. Prices also go up when there's foot and mouth, when there's a disease outbreak, and it's government to make sure that there's public health interventions and all that. So there's a lot that comes into play. But your question is still valid. In most countries, beef is a luxury. If you ask our friends coming from Germany there, they will tell you how many times a week they afford beef. So we've been privileged. But what we're trying to say is there's got to be alternatives. There's got to be goat meat. There's got to be chicken meat. There's got to be some good protein that can meet your requirements. We grew up on beef because it was the go-to and it was easy to have. My own daughter has just finished the studies, a master's on why South African youth don't eat pork, but they love bacon. I found it interesting to read. And her conclusion was that it's a cultural thing, you know, how cis pork beef, but when it comes to bacon, it is fancy enough. So maybe more education on where bacon comes from. So it's really a lot of things. It's culture that we are so adhered to beef as our go-to meat. We need to open up. And in our foods of the future, we will be living on grasshoppers and amacin, yeah, which I grew up on. But then push back quantities and also yak. But you guys will be eating that big time. I discovered, I don't know amacin here, what's the local name? Mopane worms. I hate it when they're called things. Yamacin, it's better. They have 3 times more protein density than beef. Yeah? So, indigenous foods, and so tasty, Professor Swanepoel says. But somehow, those are the foods for our grandmothers, not us. So let's open up our pantry and not cry beef, 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 because it might not come back. Yeah? But let's open up, because what you're looking for is nourishment, protein, not braai. Yeah? Okay. Is our government doing enough? What are you doing? We come through an era where everything wrong is government, government. Yeah? What are you doing? Prof here said they are failing to attract people to agriculture. Let's start there. Yeah? Let's get more who are willing, who understand that food is business for all of us, and it can be an attractive career choice. Then we can bang on government to say what I agree. I'm not defending them, but let's start with us. Yeah? Last one, was it? Okay. There are 4 hands, but the bosses have said 1.
Good evening.
Put it close.
Good evening. My name is Bufolo, and I am a final year student in Vietnam.
Final year, we won't hear you and interview you for a
oh,
job.
right. Am I audible now?
That's better.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'm a final year student in Vietnam. I'm currently studying economic development as one of my modules. And economic development focuses more on nutrition, sustainability, and health, obviously. So in South Africa, we are currently standing on a high Gini coefficient, which is inequality.
Yep.
It touches on poverty, yes, inequality as well. So I just wanted to ask, as you touched on the objective of the agricultural sector, as one of the objectives is to provide resources, and we know that economically we are facing scarcity. So to decrease poverty and also not catering for animals, but also for people. And you mentioned again the matter of suing. Who do we then sue for the people who are in need, people who are in poverty? And what other legislative matters that have been put into consideration to limit poverty? And also in the agricultural sector, what are the successes and failures that you guys have encountered in trying to reduce poverty and inequality in South Africa when it comes to nutrition and sustainability, of course?
Thank you. So I'll be quick on this one. The advantage of doing this circuit of talks is I can use the answers from the questions for my talk at Steers in Stellenbosch. So one of the comments there was, "Eish, you Zimbabweans, what's this about backyard vegetables? Front there's maize, every little street there's maize everywhere." It's because you have to produce to feed yourself. Start there. Look at every piece of land and say, what if I put this into production? Don't even think of suing other people. Look at your own backyard. Yeah? Try produce something there before you sue those who you believe should be feeding you. But on a more serious note of who should feed who, that Gini coefficient is driven by many things, right? But I think the first rudder to development is a well-nourished body and education and good health. Now, if you look at those, the good health will come from good agriculture and sustainable food system. You're well-fed, but it has to come from somewhere in terms of the food, the nourishing food. But education, you are in the right place. Bring more people and get top grades and ride on your education. There is no better way to develop a nation than to feed people well and educate them. Because you are educated so that you can reduce that coefficient by being an employer, by generating jobs for others. But if you come to school so that you are on a social grant and you are dependent, that coefficient will grow. And really, the place where I come from now, we've challenged all our graduates. They start up fund for developing technologies that you can commercialize and start your own business. We have incubation, innovation hubs. You've got to be thinking of a challenge. When I grew up, this is the problem we faced, and I want to go to school and address it. When I address it, I'll open up a factory or a business that deals with addressing that problem at scale. Once we change that mindset, we'll have more problem solvers than problem creators. There's still role for government, but I think development now is in the hands of the people. And until we change that mindset, that coefficient, Ginny, will spread because we'll all be saying, what is our government doing for us? All governments globally are challenged now. Very little money is going into public sector and development. So look inward and say, with the equipment, education that I have, what can I do? And I find if 20% of us do that, the needle will move. You are not happy? Yes, you are happy, I'm glad. Yeah.
Round of applause. Thank you, Prof. Thank you to the participants.
I was not aware that Prof Swanepoel would be in this audience because I thought I would meet him in Pretoria. But Vice Chancellor, if you allow me to say something. So when he told me he was involved with ASSAf, I've never known or understood what it's about. But when I got the letter of appointment, I was like, I want to know where this came from. And I'm happy it was announced today, so it's public that he's the one who nominated me. Thank you, Frank. The secret is out. So no wonder you are here. So yeah, Franz used to supervise our students at the University of Zimbabwe. I got a chance to work with him when I was involved at the University of Pretoria together with I call her the professor who loves students more than anybody else. She lives in a hostel so that she can look after students. But to find you here today is just an honor. Thank you so much for honoring me.
Prof Sibanda is absolutely extraordinary, and it has really been my great privilege to have known her for quite a few years. You know, sometimes you fly and there's the shadow over you because there's people flying higher. She's the one flying higher. But, and I don't mean this in a hierarchical way, it is also because she protects you to help you fly higher later. So Lindiwe, thank you very, very much. Colleagues, it's my pleasure to ask Professor Mashudu Davana Maselasele, UMP's Deputy Vice Chancellor responsible for teaching and learning, to make a few closing remarks, but I cannot resist to say, a little tongue in the cheek, I'm slightly apprehensive to ask her to come forward. So she's a health practitioner, but she's also a farmer, and quite a serious farmer. So perhaps we will not look forward to a formal response to the lecture, but really look forward to your closing remarks. Mashudu, thank you very much.
I didn't know that you can't keep secrets, Aldo. That was my secret. I don't tell people that I'm a farmer. I always say to them, because I'm from Limpopo, everyone in Limpopo is a farmer. In our house, you will always get some peanuts, some mealies, okra, all those you find. Yeah, I'm a farmer. Now I'm agreeing. Colleagues, good evening. Dimadekwan, Dumelang, Abushe, Molwen, Huyenat. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Tenjwe Meiwa, it is an honor for me to give a vote of thanks after this kind of, a function we really need to appreciate the organizers and everything that happened today. Can we just give a round of applause? You know, I am not myself. I'm not feeling okay today because when I came in here, I was dragging my feet. Aldo will understand, I'm so tired. But now when I get in here and get to listen to, you know, the speech, the presentation by Professor Lindiwe, I turned around and said, I must apologize to Aldo and say, thank you for inviting me. And I'm sure if you had not put me in the program, I wouldn't have come. But now I'm here because of the fact that I'm put in the program. But on a serious note, I want to appreciate guests who joined us this evening. And Professor Swanepoel, the choice you made, I must say thank you. You really did a great job. There is no better person that you would have brought, you know, if it wasn't for her. She spoke from the heart, and she also touched us who are indigenous farmers. So I am so grateful, and we appreciate you. All guests who are representing the African Academy of Science and all ASAf members, we really want to say thank you for honoring this invitation. We want to thank you for participating in this, and to MENCO members, our DVC, Professor Mbewe, and Aldo, who is the host, and you know, all other MENCO members, and MENCO. We know that you are very busy, but look at yourselves. You are here, and give yourself a pat on your back and say to all, well done to yourself, and say to all, well done to staff members and all other members of staff, and to students. You know, this is the very best opportunity that you rub shoulders with those who have made it. And when we talk about mentoring, this is part of it. And I'm sure from here, you're going places. And on that note, applaud yourself for that. I would like to say to Professor Strubel and your team, well done. And well done, and I really appreciate the work that you are doing. I'm sure you are so proud to see the fruits of your labor. I must say, well done. To our VC, in my language we say, Zandla ziyatanzwa. The same that you said is Zandla ziyagezana. Zandla ziyatanzwa. And it's, you know, it was like prophetic, because what you said now is going to come to fruition, because we want these hands to wash each other. This speech, the presentation actually says to us, we need those hands. And we will really appreciate your speech and the energy that you always bring and the support. And you never complain, you never say, I'm tired and all that. We all feel obliged, because if the leader is leading, we'll have to follow. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing. Professor Ludid, you're leading by example as an ASSAf member. And with all that we're saying, I'm sure you should be a proud dean. We are always here because of your faculty. So I don't want to fight others. I don't want to be in trouble. But most of the evenings, we are kept here because of the work in your faculty. So we want to thank you for the work that you are doing. Dr. Dalo, the SAYAS 2025. Let's give her a round of applause. You know, it's so encouraging to see young, I don't want to say young women, but yeah, I'm correct. To see young women making it to the top. You know, we are so proud of you, and keep shining. And you know, she was one of the first supervisors, promoters of a first PhD at UMP who graduated 2025, our first PhD. So can we give her a serious round of applause? Thank you. To Professor Lindiwe Sibanda, the VC said, Izandla, Zageza. Right now, as I was sitting there, I was saying, oh, short learning programs. That's my biggest area that I'm really focusing on. And I was saying to myself, now I have somebody who will come and facilitate. And I'm saying, VC, I won't take no for an answer. The good thing is that she's retired and Zimbabwe is around the corner. So as African, if we want to do what you said we must do, as Africans, we really need to work with you to help us to get to where you would want to be as Africans. And I think you really touched my heart. And as I was listening to you, I said to myself, you know, as a farmer by choice, you know, because of the virtue of the fact that where I stay, you know, you cannot stay in your house when others are busy farming. So it's, sometimes you will feel you are forced because your neighbor is busy farming. So what would you say you're doing? So with all that you said, I was saying to myself, but what are we doing as Africans to improve in the issues of technology? Because I think we should be coming to us and say, how best, with the students that we have, how best can we improve and ensure that farming becomes more interesting? Because who wants to hold a hoe when it's so hot? You know, Limpopo is very hot, eh? So why would you want to stay in the sun and get that heat stroke, you know? But if we get that, you know, technology, we should be able to do better. And on that note, I'm saying, we're committing to say, short courses, watch the space, we're coming. And we will call you and request your assistance. And so thank you very much for talking to our hearts. I know if I was young, I was going to enroll for something in agriculture, but believe me, one short course I will attend. So can we applaud her? And you know, sometimes it gets you feel very sad when you see it. We can do so much. We have so much. Our soil is producing continually. But because we have that skill we do not have to say, shouldn't we be producing only for our own household? We should be producing for the country. I mean, look at the mangoes that get rotten when it's raining, the lychees that get rotten, the avocados. What are we doing in terms of, you know, the markets and all that? Oh, let me stop and say thank you, because now I'm speaking from the heart. Well done, Prof. We really appreciate you. Dr. Ntite, I know as usual, you really kept us so, you know, participatory, and we really want to thank you for everything, for controlling the crowd, and also for organizing this, because I know you've been very involved in this. I want to say to organizers of this event, to photographers, everyone else, thank you for making this evening a very fruitful one. I'm sure our students are so proud to be UMP students. And you know, I was saying to myself, with innovation, come to UMP. Our students are great innovators. And imagine when you have some time with a person like Professor Lindiwe and listen to what she says. You go out and spend sleepless nights and feel like, I can't sleep anymore. I want to do more. So I'm challenging you to say, grab this opportunity with your two hands and go out and make South Africa a better place. And we have land. Other countries do not even have space for planting. They will talk about so many things, planting from top to bottom and all that. Till now we have plenty of land. What are we doing? I want to say to students, opportunities like this, you don't miss them. So go out and be innovators and show the world what you're made of. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Professor Davana Masadisele is a truly wonderful person and academic leader, isn't she? And she inspires us every day. I'm very happy that we've inspired you a little bit, because yes, all of us are tired today, but we have wonderful news that the Vice-Chancellor will announce in the next 2 months or so that started its council approval route today. So we are very pleased, even though a little tired. So it's been a day of elation. Dear participants, thank you very much for being here today. thank you very much that we had to stop the questions. I love that. I'm sorry that we had to. And I don't mean I love stopping the questions, I mean because of time. So your interest and energy, colleagues, we are very pleased. I must single out three people today. It's Wanita Parks, Kulisile Mashaba, and Sifiso Msimanga, who's been truly instrumental in putting all of this together, and as well as Tubile Koza. Colleagues, thank you very much for your usual super professionalism. We also must conclude by thanking ASSAf tremendously for this opportunity. Dr. Mabota, who is here. We are also very pleased about a longer-term program at the university currently that Professor Swanepoel assisted us with, but that Professor Kutu is leading now, and I'm really very pleased that Dr. Vakudia is here, postdoc working with me on a program called Strengthening Agricultural Research and Innovation that is truly led nationally by the Mpumalanga province and UMP currently. So we are very pleased, and thank you in general for this wonderful leadership and support, Dr. Mabota. Colleagues, that concludes then the formal part of this lecture. We want to invite, please, all the functionaries on the program to come forward for a photo. We inviting, please, all the postdocs, staff, visitors, and guests to dinner, which will be held now at the conference center. And really would like to thank you again, sincerely, for being here. And we look forward to future engagements, not only with Professor Sibanda, but with ASSAf and other really scholars and academic leaders that joins us at the university as we grow and as we position. Also ask everyone please to use that exit or at the back while we converge here for the photo opportunity. Thank you very much, colleagues. Have a good evening.